Hi everyone, it's Connie here. Today I want to take you on a tour of my garden. Since it's difficult for you to come see my garden, we hope that my garden's going to come to you through YouTube. So we're starting at the front of my house just to show you that I have a collection of cactus and agaves and succulents. And this is kind of a little test garden. Someday I'm gonna have a cactus garden, but right now they're just like ornaments. They're just in front of the house. And the cat, that's another ornament. And so also in front of our house, there's a garden bed, and that has, again, that has mostly succulents and agaves in it. But you can see some flowers where I've tucked in some little blooming flowers. But this is a west-facing garden, and so it's really hot in the afternoon. So everything there has to be able to handle the heat. Okay, so I'm going to show you. We're going to go to what I call my back garden. So this is what we call our back garden. And when we moved here in '82, all of this was covered with blackberries and poison oak. And because this was a little area that had some flatness, this is where we started our garden. And so every year we would just add on a little more. And so this is the oldest part of the garden. And so we started with this one raised bed, and then it goes on. But over the years, we've changed this middle part, and it's now a dahlia garden. So all of the things growing in that area are dahlias, and they get dug and replanted. Whereas this stays, except for just little spots, this garden stays the same. Same perennials year after year. These are phlox, tall phlox, and they stay, they're perennials, they come up every year. And behind them are lilies. Same thing, they come up every year. Whereas the flowers over here, the dahlias, they get dug every other year, and I plant new ones. And I give away lots of tubers for interested people. So in the beginning, our garden went to this plum tree. And we have a pear tree back there, but the garden kind of stopped here. And then after a few years, we got some raised beds. And that's how we moved the garden this way, is by using these raised beds. And the raised beds, the intent was for a vegetable garden. But you can see other things got popped up in there. I had kale and chard all over, and lettuce early in the spring in this garden. Then this garden has tomatoes and peppers, and at the end it has a plant of beans, and even a little lettuce is planted in this one. The last one here is, at the end I had peas, and they're right at the end, so I pulled a lot of them out. And then there was chard, and my potatoes will be dug this weekend. And then right here I have a cucumber plant. So this is where the edible garden is. And then our garden, you can see this is where it ends. So we kind of carved this you can see in the distance what it looked like prior to us carving out a garden. So it ends right there. This part isn't pretty, but it's functional. This is my potting area. So just so you can see where I get dirty, down and dirty. So I have potting soil back there. I have daffodils and tulips that have already bloomed, and so they get pulled back here. I have plants that I've started, and these are called epiphyllums, and so after they bloom, they're kind of ugly, so they come back here. So this is where I start plants and divide plants. Okay. This is a garden area that's behind our bedroom. We can see it from our bedroom. And it was redone 3 years ago. And it's probably my favorite part of the garden. And so there are lots of hydrangeas here. There's a little water feature here. Lots of ferns. I have a collection of ferns. And it's just, for me, it's just a little place of beauty. Back here, most of you probably have not seen these before. And they're called serracemias. And they're pitcher plants. So they are the ones that insects crawl down inside and are not able to get back out. And I have I'll show you some more, but that's my new collection, is serracemias. 3 areas, if it's hot, that we can go sit down. It's usually Dave that goes and sits down, but this is one of them right here. It's in front of our bedroom, and if we've been working out in the garden, we just have a place to come and sit in the shade. And this is our old pear tree, but it's looking good. And then this is an old deck. This deck was done probably in the late 80s. And it used to be kind of a centerpiece, but now the rest of the garden looks good. But every year I do 5 tomato plants. And they're always the little tomatoes. And the idea being that we can walk out the door and grab some little tomatoes to eat. And this spot is kind of new this year. I took all of my herbs, with the exception of the big rosemary plant. I took all my other herbs and moved them right in this corner. So I can get out the door, hopefully, and use them in an efficient way instead of going out in my back garden. Now this garden, from here down to our compost, was redone 2 years ago. And it's hard to believe because of all these big plants, but this garden, this whole side of our house, was completely different. And there's some more of my serracemia plants growing right there. A lot of rhodies, so you'll see a lot of rhodies now. I have 96 rhodies. I counted them finally. And I'll show you a couple here. My brother, some of you know my brother hybridizes rhodies. And what he's trying to get are small rhodies that remain small but have beautiful blooms. And so you'll see in my garden a lot of small rhodies, and that's intentional. So, okay, let's just walk down So this is, we call the garden off the patio. And same thing, you'll see that Dave terraced and made trails, and he did the work. He did the work of the trails and the stones, and over a period of about 20 years of moving the garden little by little down the hill. So this is kind of like what we call path one. When my dad died in 2012, we redid this garden here, and you can see there's a stone for my dad and one for my mom. And now, of course, it's all grown up. But it used to have great big roadies like that one. So, walk around. Oh my goodness. A little lily that jumped out of there. So in order to know how to talk about our garden, we call them path one, path two. So this is path one. And this path goes down to a deck that Dave built. And from this deck, you can look down on our property and see more than just our garden, but you can see we have a chicken wire fence around our property, around the garden part, to keep the deer out. And so we have 6.5 acres. So lots of trees. In the February storm, over 30 trees came down on our property. So Dave has lots of wood. So some of these roadies that you'll see in the beginning are pretty good sized roadies, because those are the first, because my brother being a roadie guy, we started our garden as a rhododendron garden, this garden. So now we're going on path two. So you can see, if you're looking kind of northwest, these are pretty big roadies. And I would say they've been here probably, I don't know, since the early 90s at least. So these big ones, and most of those came from my brother, came from cuttings or not yet. He hadn't, I didn't have any of his hybridized roadies yet. This, a lot of you probably won't know what that is. That's called a podophyllum, and its common name is a mayapple. And so I have some there. This guy, I don't know, that's an unhappy mayapple. And then I have one here, and I have a great big one down there. So they like shade. I'm wondering if maybe this one got too much heat. So, but you have to survive at my house. And then all of the roadies that you see here on this level are Japanese roadies. They're called Yakuza madams, and they are all crossed with other roadies, so they bloom a little bit differently, but they're all the same type of roadie. And one of the distinguishing features is the back of the leaf is real fuzzy, and it can be rust colored, or sometimes it can be silver colored. So. So now we're going down to path 3. And this has a little bit of everything. It has tree peonies, roses, fuchsias, azaleas, just a little bit of everything. Chickadees. So at the end of that path, we have a little water feature. The pump isn't working right now, so it looks like, I don't know, it looks like that. So then this path we call path 4, and it goes down to what Dave calls the Memorial Annex. And it's more rustic. And I want you to notice what we're trying to do now, because we have so many people who want to go through the garden, but our garden is pretty rustic, and so we're putting up some things that you can grab a hold of, and so that more people can go through the garden. So this part of the garden is mostly rhodies, lots of rhodies. And you can see, remember when I told you about the Japanese rhodies? You can see this fuzzy stuff on the back side. So it makes it really beautiful, like you can look up through there and see a rust-colored rhodie. That's the back of the leaf. So it makes a really beautiful thing to look up under these rhodies. This is kind of cool because you can see what the deck was built on, these giant rocks coming out on our property, and we have them in 3 different places, huge rocks. And so the garden kind of stops right here. We have some rhodies. And then you can see here probably this chicken wire. That's all we have. We don't have any fancy fence. It's just chicken wire. And the deer do get in every year, a couple times. So we have to just walk the line to make sure that there aren't any little holes. So now we're going to go on path 5. Okay. And it's, part of it has just been redone this year. So you can see that this part of the garden looks more natural. And this part of our garden is the most beautiful in the spring, when all the rhodies are blooming and peonies, and so lots of wildflowers. So this has been redone, this path right here. So it's still considered to be path 5, but this has been widened and gives you an idea of what it looks like outside of the garden. That's what everything looked like when we moved in. So everywhere around in our garden, we have these stones. I forget how many of them, and they're in honor of a friend or a relative. This happens to be Dave's dad. And so we have ashes in this garden from, I think, at least 6 people. So we've had people send us even little packets of ashes to put out in this garden. And well, I don't want to tell you how we throw them around. That's another story. So we're going back up to the patio. I'm noticing everything that needs water. It's looking kind of droopy. So I wanted to show you the view. I don't know where's the easiest part for you to see the river. But the reason we ended up buying this house is because we had an incredible view of the river. Well, that view was in 1982, and we didn't know all these trees were gonna grow up and become obstacles to seeing the view. But in the winter time, we have a pretty good view, and it's the South Umpqua. And this is where we spend most of the time, out here on this patio, because my little bird friends are usually at the bird feeders. And so this is where we can have company, and we move these chairs around so we're 6 feet. We can space 6 feet. So 6 of us can be on this patio comfortably and drink wine. So that's the little tour of my garden. So thank you for coming.